Chapter 21. Training Day. It would be another half hour before the students were called to make their way to one end of the courtyard. Ryuga met up with both Parisia and Saya at this time, while dodging death stares from Tirna and his pack of highborn friends.
Now, students, the moment you've been waiting for. Follow me,
Finley said as he turned, walking through a very large wooden gate. The massive doors swung open, and soon all the students were filtering through them, nearly 400 strong. As Ryuga made it through the main courtyard, he noticed that there were 4 other gates, each with hundreds of students flowing out. Soon there were a little over 12,000 Nekoma standing in the main courtyard area, which was easily large enough to accommodate them. At the far end of this area was a large stage with 4 pillars and a wooden roof, ornate with elaborate woodwork. On the stage sat dozens of Nekoma, and if Ryuga had to guess, these were teachers or faculty members. He could even spot Imelda from his place in the crowd, though she seemed not to notice him. After a few minutes of chatter from the students gathered in the courtyard, someone on stage began to speak.
Welcome, young Nekoma.
Ryuga noticed the man as head examiner Dunzo.
Some of you may know me as head examiner Dunzo, overseer of the ancient testing rituals of Sen warriors. I, much like you, once attended the Six Academy, and I am better for it. You are here today because you, of all the people in this world, have the ability to safeguard our future. I won't lie to you. The path you've chosen can be challenging and trying at times, but your education here will enrich the lives of you and all of those you are connected to for years to come. I encourage you to put aside your differences and learn from each other, regardless of your station or upbringing. Later in life, some of the people you see around you may very well become your closest allies.
Dunzo only paused to scan the crowd for a moment before continuing.
I'd now like to invite a great woman to the stage. You will come to know her in your years of study. Head Mistress Modessa.
Dunzo turned, nodding to the woman who would stand before the students next. Modessa was a striking woman with long, shiny red hair. Her skin was fair, much like a high elf, and her ears appeared elvish, though they weren't as long or as sharp as high or dusk elves. Her body was sultry. From head to toe, she had a sleek frame, busty bosom, and curvy thighs, all accentuated by the fact that she was wearing a rather revealing dress. There was a long slit across the side of the dress, revealing a great deal of her thighs and highlighting the fact that she may not be wearing panties at all. The dress was sleeveless, as well with a deep V-cut. Many of the Nekoma boys, and some of the girls, began to murmur as they watched her walk forward to address the crowd.
Greetings, Academy students. As you've just heard from Head Examiner Dunzo, I am your head mistress, overseer of the legendary Six Academy. As I look out into the crowd, I see the future of tomorrow. It is our job here to take you to new heights in the short time we will spend with you. Our goal is to make you strong enough to stand against the terrors that exist outside these walls. This is the springtime of your youth. Devote yourself to your studies. Cultivate your strength, and you will always be rewarded. These young people behind me,
Modessa motioned,
will be your guides for the first month of your stay here at the Academy.
The first row of seated Nekoma stood up at her beckoning and bowed towards the crowd before walking towards the large group of people.
Welcome to Six Academy. You're now one of the chosen. Strive to become a warrior of legend,
Modessa said as she bowed, revealing even more of her heavenly mountains. The crowd erupted into a thunderous clap, though Ryuga felt it was mostly young boys raising hell.
Attention students! You will now notice that you have a number branded on the back of your palm. Don't be alarmed. This is a magic mark that will disappear by day's end. We will be grouping you into several smaller groups to begin the training process. For the next 3 weeks, you will be in these groups, so it's important that you find the correct one.
An older Dusk Elf boy shouted as several of the guides began to move through the crowds of students. After another 15 minutes of work, the guides finally finished placing the students into groups of 100. Ryuga's turn was finally upon him.
13! If you've got the number 13 on your hand, report here to me.
It was the same Dusk Elf boy who addressed all the students at the outset of the regrouping. He waited patiently for the students to gather closer, which didn't take long as they were the last students in the courtyard.
So, 50 of you, That means you're the smallest group. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. My name is Daran. I'm a third-year student here at the academy. I'll be working with you for the next 3 weeks or so. If you have any questions or concerns, bring them to me. I'll be sure to do my absolute best to address them. Now, follow me,
Daran said as he walked towards the nearby gate with his group of students. Ryuga lucked out. Having been grouped with both Saya and Parisia, he felt a bit more comfortable at the very least. This wooden gate was much smaller than the main gates they'd entered through, and behind the entrance was a portal of light.
Okay, listen up, fellow acolytes. These are Shimmer Portals. They're used to instantly travel from place to place in Six Academy. For you, you need to have permission to use them. In fact, if you try to use them without proper enchantment, you'll be in a world of hurt. Starting today, all of you will be living in one of the newbie dorms. They are old and respected structures, so I trust you will take care of your temporary living accommodations.
Excuse me? Will boys and girls be required to sleep in the same building as each other?
A young Usagi Nekoma asked, her long rabbit ears perking above her head.
Yes, these are co-ed dorms, but don't worry. Any improper conduct will be dealt with swiftly, so don't get any ideas,
Daran said with a menacing smile.
Any other questions so far?
He then asked.
Yes. Why do they call it Six Academy?
Ryuga asked. Other Nekoma began to chuckle under their breath and cast glances at Ryuga. But Daran simply smiled and replied.
The academy is actually made up of 6 different campuses. In fact, this portal leads to an entirely new campus hundreds of miles away on the north of the continent. 6 facilities, hundreds of teachers, and we can all share knowledge to help you grow and reach your full potential. Good question, young one. Your name?
Daran asked as he pointed to Ryuga.
Ryuga,
he said with a slight head bow.
Great. Anyone else?
Daran questioned before returning to the task at hand.
Now, when using a Shimmer Portal, all you need to do is step inside and activate the full-body aura. You will then be sent to your destination in an instant. For the sake of time, I'd like to ask all of you to enter 10 at a time. Once you get to the other side, please move out of the way so that others can filter through.
Parisia grimaced at the thought of having to be teleported again, and Saya seemed rather uncomfortable as well.
Perhaps it's a Nekomata thing,
Ryuga thought to himself. Soon, all of the students were on the other side of the shimmering portal, and the view was totally different. The air was much more crisp, and Ryuga immediately noticed the change in temperature. A cool wind was blowing, and the trees in the courtyard were of a different type. Needles, small and thin, a deep green color for the trees poking over the walls of the courtyard, filled the air with a strong scent of tree oil. Daran led the students to what he called the 13th dorm. It was a rather large building, which resembled an apartment complex to Ryuga's eyes. Daran showed all of the students around the building and mentioned that they would be able to choose rooms later that evening. They also met a dozen assistant instructors who would be helping Daran with their training.
For now, it's best that we get started right away,
he began as he led the group of students and assistants out of the building into a nearby courtyard. The students lined up in rows of 15 as they listened to Daran's instructions.
The purpose of these first 3 weeks at Six Academy is to assess your ability as a Sen warrior. This will be used to help you grow by strengthening your weaknesses and expanding on your capabilities,
Daran said as he reached into his gi and pulled out a large, strange-looking crystal from his pocket.
What is that? It looks familiar,
Ryuga asked Parisia.
It's a rainbow crystal. It's used to test for elemental affinity. I've seen one used before.
Saya chimed in, smiling gently in Ryuga's direction. He smiled back before replying.
Thanks. All right. In order to start you on your way, our first task is to check your affinity for the elements. Not only will this crystal give us an idea of what element you can use, but it will also tell us your level of influence with that element. For example, I can use lightning element with 100% proficiency.
Darran held up his hand and flared his mana, which began to crackle and surge as it formed lightning in his palm. This won several reactions of awe from the crowd, and even Ryuga was excited.
Heck yeah, I'm gonna learn that,
he whispered to himself.
Your lightning element?
Saya asked, seemingly appearing out of thin air.
Yeah, sort of,
Ryuga said. He remembered Imelda's words and was suddenly filled with a sense of dread. There were dozens of people around. How would he hide the fact that he could use multiple elements while taking this test publicly? He shot a worried glance over at Parisia, who didn't seem to pick up on the situation.
Okay, there are 12 assistants, so take your place in line with them except for you, and you,
Darran said as he pointed towards Ryuga, Parisia, and Saya. Ryuga was completely caught off guard, but perhaps considered it a blessing in disguise.
I was informed by your master, Imelda, that you two have already identified your elements and proficiencies. As for you, Saya, I understand that Ryuga here is your new master. Ryuga, according to the ancient law, you, as her master, should decide what techniques Saya should study. Your decision to have her take this and all other tests belong to you. Would you like Saya to take part in this test?
Darran asked. For a moment, Ryuga didn't react. His mind was simply blown that he was given the responsibility to make such a simple choice on the behalf of someone else. He came to his senses and noticed Saya's gaze set upon him.
Oh yeah, she's free to take every test there is. I really don't mind,
Ryuga replied. He felt his ears burning as a sensation of nervous, uncomfortable energy washed over him.
Excellent. In that case, Saya, step forward,
Darran said as he held the crystal before the young Nekomata and had her focus her energy into it. Now that Ryuga looked more closely, the crystal reminded him of the ancient crystal from the potential test. The only differences were its size and that there were 8 different portions to the crystal, each a different color. It made sense as to why it was called a rainbow crystal.
Ah, excellent, wow! Saya, you are one who can command the power of water. In addition, you have a 30% proficiency. That's extremely high for a beginner.
Wow, Saya, that's great.
Parisia said as she grabbed onto Saya's arm. The young cat girl blushed, beaming with pride. It was almost as if it was her first time being complimented for anything.
Thanks, and thank you, Master, for allowing me to take the test,
Saya said with a bow directed towards Ryuga.
No, it's okay. You don't have to bow to me. Also, just call me Ryuga,
he replied.
Okay, you 3 can take a place over there until the other students are tested,
Darran directed, motioning to a small group of kids who'd already been tested by the other assistants. As Ryuga walked away from the instructor, he felt a weight lifted from his shoulders.
Thank God for Imelda,
Ryuga whispered to himself as he held his chest in relief.